What is up, everybody? This is Anthony with VR365. Welcome to another episode of our show. This, of course, is the Sunday Fun Day show. This is our after party. I just got done with a VR Roundtable episode that we did earlier today, episode 112. It was me, Chris, and Steve. Gary was absent for that show. And we talked about the Hewlett-Packard Copper HMD that we heard about earlier this week. We talked about the Rift S and how it's kind of confusing what might be going on there with the Rift S. We talked about the Dirt Rally 2.0 getting VR support. We talked about Angry Birds VR. We had a number of different things that we got into, so make sure you bounce over to VR Roundtable at some point, the VR Roundtable channel. Check that show out if you didn't get a chance to check that out already earlier today. And but now we're going to get into our Sunday Fun Day episode of VR365. I gotta say that really don't have much to talk about today, but luckily we are going to have a special guest in about 10 minutes or so. You might remember, I don't know if it was a couple weeks ago, I kind of got out there and said, you know, we're looking for people to possibly come on this show. Viewers of this show, people that tune into this show, to get some different voices on this show, get some other people on this show. And what we're doing is audio, just audio only. So we don't even need a video feed for you. So you don't got to worry about what you look like. You don't got to worry about any of those things. It's just audio only. And we've had MameFan has come on the show maybe about 3 different times, I think. So we've had MameFan on the show a couple of times, audio only. And now we're going to have a special guest today, ShortPower24. She is going to be coming on the show a little bit later, and well, actually probably in about 8 minutes or so, she'll be calling in, and might take a minute to get the audio set up. Oh, one thing I need to tell ShortPower24, if you're watching this right now, make sure when you call to mute the YouTube audio. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, mute the YouTube audio, because otherwise then it will bleed through and we'll hear like an echo. But yeah, so we're going to have ShortPower24 coming on in a little bit, and that's going to be kind of an interview. It's going to be a little bit different than what we've done before, like with MameFan. It's more, I'm going to be kind of interviewing somebody and getting an idea of like her background in gaming, her background from a VR standpoint. And she's kind of a casual, doesn't have like all the headsets you would think, and so it's going to be an interesting angle to talk to her about that and get her takes on stuff. But real quick, we do have some very minor news topics to get into right now. So right here on the screen, we're seeing a trailer for Blood and Truth for PlayStation VR, and this is, wait, no, this is Defector, never mind. Looks very similar to Blood and Truth, but not quite. But actually, one little quick news story I do have today before we get into our interview is there was a story that was on Upload VR a couple of days ago about Blood and Truth that I didn't get into yet. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bounce over to our webby browser here. Let's go ahead and bounce over. And yeah, this is the story that I'm talking about here. PSVR's Blood and Truth rating suggests that a launch is imminent, possibly, is the question here. So this was back on February 6th. This is like 4 days ago. And I had this as one of the stories I was going to get to. And unfortunately, I just got discombobulated or what. Basically, we did not get to this story. And I never covered this story. And this is still a pretty significant story because Blood and Truth probably the single biggest PlayStation VR game that is on the horizon. Probably our most wanted PlayStation VR game that is still floating out there right now, because we've already got Borderlands 2 VR. We've already got Astrobot. This is one of the big ones that we still don't have. Now, Blood and Truth, we thought we might get this in the 4th quarter of last year, but we never got a date. We never heard anything, and it just kind of faded off into the distance. Then I thought, well, you know, surely we're going to get Blood and Truth very early in 2019, but we haven't heard a single peep about it. And this is a major game. You got to imagine we're going to have a release date. We're going to have some knowledge of this. It's not just going to be a stealth launch and just all of a sudden, Blood and Truth is coming out tomorrow. You know, I don't think they're going to do that. I think we're going to get some additional trailers. There's going to be a little bit of a hype factor here. And why are we saying that it might be? Why do we say that a launch could be imminent? Well, the reason is the Australian Classification Board yesterday, now this would be back on February 5th, they awarded the game an MA 15 plus rating, which says the game has strong violence and language as well as mild sexual references. And what they say here, this doesn't mean that launch is imminent, but it's a good sign. This kind of means like it must be entering the home stretch. Hopefully this is a clue that this game is not tremendously far away. Maybe it's coming in March. Maybe it's a very early April game. We don't have like a PEGI or ESRB listing for the game yet, but it could be coming in the near future. So I'm really hopeful for that, because I got to tell you, man, we would like to know some more about this. We'd like to get a date. One of the downsides we have in the VR gaming industry is a lot of times we're not getting dates way out there in advance with a lot of these games. A lot of times it is kind of a last minute thing. We're kind of lucky that we know about Asgard's Wrath. We know it's kind of targeting July. And a lot of times we don't get this. You know, games just, we have to wait. They just randomly come out. We randomly get dates, and we're kind of waiting around on that. Okay, so I'm going to bounce back over here to my standard scene, and you know what? I'm going to grab the Angry Birds trailer real quick, because I need to talk about Angry Birds again. Okay, so yesterday on this show, I was talking about Angry Birds, and I was talking about how I was disappointed with Angry Birds the first night that I played it. In fact, not only was I disappointed, but I kind of got bored and like didn't want to continue playing it. But I forced my way, you know, I was like, nah, I got to see the second stage. I got to get through all these early levels. I got to at least see the second stage of Angry Birds. But it was kind of like not the greatest experience, and I really wasn't going to be recommending it to people too much. But what happened is, yesterday I decided, well, I better do a Let's Play for Angry Birds. Let me give this another college try. Let me give this another chance. And I got into Angry Birds yesterday, and I ended up doing a Let's Play. It's out there, it's available. I played some more of Angry Birds, and I had a lot more fun. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know why it's so different from one day to the next, why I had so much more fun. I started thinking about it, and I thought, you know, I wonder if it's some kind of, you know, if it has something to do with, it's a Let's Play. And because I'm doing a Let's Play, I don't know, did it change it for me? It made it more interesting? Or it's just I had a better experience the second time I played it? Or maybe it's because I've unlocked a lot of different levels, you know, and so I had all these levels that were already unlocked, so I could just go into them. And I didn't have, you know, I wasn't frustrated with any of some of the levels where it took me a long time to get through them. But I had a lot more fun the second time I played it. It still ultimately is Angry Birds, you know. I mean, it's just Angry Birds, and it's not doing anything radically different. It's not changing the game, you know, in any kind of a way. It's just Angry Birds. But I had a lot better time. So, you know, there is that. So I probably was way too harsh on that yesterday and was kind of, you know, not saying it was that great. I am Rhett says actually, let me get my chat popped out over on this side here where I should have it chapped out. I am Rhett says, at Angry Birds, our mood can also affect our thoughts on games. Maybe you just had a bad day. Da 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 da. Yeah, you know, I don't know that I had a bad day. Actually, I think one possibility was my expectations were too high. Like I went into it with too high of expectations, thinking like, oh, this is going to be so incredibly polished, so much incredible spit shine and all this stuff, and every little sound effect, every little jingle, every little menu, everything is going to be so dialed in. And I might have set myself up for really high expectations, and while everything was pretty solid, it maybe wasn't as incredible as I thought it was going to be. So, You know, that probably was the situation there with Angry Birds, but it's definitely not a horrible game by any stretch of the imagination. So I did want to mention that. Okay, so now what we're going to do now is pretty soon we will have our special guest call in, and I will go ahead and get into that interview with ShortPower24. But in the... Oh, she's checking in right now. Okay, so let me go ahead and answer this call. Hello. Hey, what's up? Okay, so what I'm going to do right now, your voice is not on the show yet. So what I got to do, oops, hold on a second here. So what I have to do is unlock my desktop audio. Okay, so now we're going to have to figure out the your volume level. Let me go ahead and switch over here, though. I made a different scene for having guests on Skype audio. So hold on one second here. We're going to switch over to this scene. And there it is, ShortPower24. You are on the screen there, live on air, Skype. Now, here's the thing. One thing I forgot to explain to you is there is a delay. So, like, if you're watching this on a YouTube channel on your computer, go ahead and mute it. And there's going to be like a 7, 10, 15-second delay. So it's going to be a little bit weird for you from that standpoint.
Right. Yeah, it'll even be a little bit longer because I always cast to my Chromecast, and that adds even a couple seconds on top of that.
Okay, I'm trying to dial in your audio here, and so I will need help from everyone in chat in getting her audio dialed in and getting her level dialed in where I might be like really loud compared to you, or you might be really loud compared to me, but we'll eventually get that dialed in, although there is a delay, so it's going to take a little time to do that. But what I'll do is I'll just start asking, we can start doing some of the interview questions, and then we'll just check in on how the audio is working as we go along. Okay.
Yeah, good.
Okay, so so when I thought of this idea, like one of the things that I do want to do with this show is try to bring some more people on, people that maybe listen to the show, watch the show, but they don't interact in chat. Maybe they're not on our Discord server. Maybe we don't hear from them. Okay, Conrad Lawrence says sounds good, so we might be at a good volume right now. But this is something I do want to do, and I'm encouraging other people out there as well. I did make a special call out for possibly a female voice, and I got lucky on this one. We have ShortPower24. Maybe I only have like 5 female watchers of this program. So, I mean, who knows? We don't know. It's just you get these YouTube stats. They make it seem like it's, 100% males, and it is good to get a female perspective on this because it's mostly a male perspective. Let's get some different voices. Let's get some different opinions. I think it's a good idea. So we have ShortPower24 joining us. And, I'm going to go ahead and start off and say, my first question is, well, would you consider yourself a gamer, or are you someone that's just a fan of virtual reality in general?
I would definitely consider myself a gamer, but probably more of a casual gamer. Definitely not hardcore.
Okay. And I'm waiting also to see if anybody notices, like, if you're really loud or not. So I'm checking to see if anything happens there. Somebody said, how long are we going to end up watching this trailer? That's I Am Ruts. So, okay, I will grab a different trailer, Ruts. Hold on a second. Hold on to your horses. I will grab one of my little trailer mixes. This way it goes through a number of different trailers. Okay, so you do consider yourself a gamer. Well, why don't we get into a little bit of your gaming history? Like, has there been different consoles that you've owned back in the days? Were you ever much of a computer gamer? Or did you mostly play on consoles? Or maybe like a 3DS or something like that? Or where did you spend most of your time? Okay, volume needs to go up, is what they're telling me.
Yeah, a little bit of a mix of all of them. My first console was a PlayStation. Before that, I'd played with a few of the friends' consoles, some of the earlier ones that came before that. But I played, the classics, Spyro, Crash Bandicoot. I played Final Fantasy 7 and 8 on that PlayStation. I had a Game Boy Color as a kid. And then when I was in high school, I did build a PC. So it's not like I can't build a PC, but I don't have a desktop right now. I sold that off while I was in college and opted for the laptop. So I've had some of the different consoles. I've also played on PC. When I was a kid and, in middle school and high school, me and my friends loved to play things like The Sims, Roller Coaster Tycoon. or we go to the arcade and play Dance Dance Revolution. So, you know, the casual gamer as a kid too.
Yeah, that's quite the history. But the thing is, you've played a lot of games, so it's not like it's like some unknown thing for you. You've been gaming for quite some time. Maybe you weren't like super hardcore, but you've definitely been gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How did you get into VR? Like, what was do you remember the first thing that kind of like, where did you first hear about VR? Do you even remember what year it was?
It was around the DK2 days that I started hearing about the news and getting really interested in reading articles about the technology, watching YouTube videos about it. I don't remember what the first thing I heard was or the first video I watched. But it was, you know, about 3 years ago when the DK2 was coming out. There was a channel that I was watching that's not active anymore called Everyday VR that had a lot of just fascinating kind of technological breakdowns of the different tech demos that were coming out and the different little games and experiences. And I just thought the technology was fascinating, even though had been a long time since I had a desktop PC, and, you know, building another gaming rig was kind of out of the question financially. I just thought the technology was really cool.
Yeah, I think the first time I can remember the first time I heard about VR is like I was listening to this podcast, Giant Bomb. I don't know if you've ever heard of Giant Bomb, but it's like a website, and they had a podcast that was really popular back in the day. I mean, it's still popular now probably, but they're just not into VR, so I don't pay attention to it too much. But I remember it was way back when Palmer Luckey, I believe, had gone to, I don't know if it was like an E3 or what it was, but he like met John Carmack and was talking with John Carmack. And then one of the Giant Bomb guys had actually interviewed John Carmack, and it was all about Doom in VR. And that was like my first idea into, oh, this VR thing is coming back. You know, this VR thing is actually happening again. But I didn't know, like, I wasn't early in the VR thing. I kind of was a little bit late, but I heard about it as just a flat gamer that heard that this was happening again. But I started to get more excited when, you know, we started to see like the Oculus. Did Oculus have a Kickstarter, or am I tripping out? Like, didn't they have a Kickstarter way back in the days, or did they? I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure they did.
Yeah, okay. I wonder about my memory sometimes. But yeah, when that first happened, it's like, okay, this is like a real thing. And then it really got real when Facebook bought them. Like when Facebook bought them, that's when it really got real. And then, you know, it got real for everybody. Like we heard VR so much. Actually, you know what? Here's a good question. So in the early days of VR, there was this hype level that happened, and there was this excitement where everybody kind of thought VR was really going to blow up, and it was going to be a really big deal really fast, that it was not going to take a long time. It wasn't going to be a slow burn. And so I'm guessing that when you got into VR, you kind of heard about that stuff at that time. But now VR's kind of taken a step back. Has your excitement level diminished at all, and from the standpoint that VR hasn't exactly like gone gangbusters so far? Oh. Hello?
Hey,
okay.
Sorry, my really old crappy Wi-Fi router must have cut out for a second there.
Oh, no problem. Okay, I was just asking a question. You probably didn't hear the last question I asked you. But, okay, we're good now. So the last question I was asking you was, when we first got into VR, and there was this excitement level about VR, like blowing up and becoming a really huge thing. And a lot of venture capitalists were just throwing crazy money at VR. Everybody had these grand ambitions for how big VR was going to be. But it kind of didn't work out that way so much. And we're kind of in this trough of disillusionment a little bit, where VR hasn't exactly become the next best thing since sliced bread so far. Has that dampened your enthusiasm a little bit, or have you weathered that storm in terms of your own personal enthusiasm for all of it?
No, it didn't dampen my enthusiasm. I think that maybe the last big piece of tech, being the smartphone, maybe raised people's expectations that, like, oh, the next piece of technology will do the same thing and become as ubiquitous as the smartphone. And then we came back to reality and realized, no, it's going to take a little longer than that, and it might not get quite that widespread. And I think what we've seen is pretty realistic. I mean, the PSVR is the one that we see the biggest numbers from. And I think that's, pretty reasonable. And I think we'll see some steady growth in it. And then I think, like farther out, 5-10 years in the future, it will start to become more common and more popular. So that didn't dampen anything for me.
Okay, so let's talk about your hardware. And so you have an Oculus Rift, right? You have an HTC Vive and Windows Mixed Reality and a PlayStation VR. You have all the headsets, right?
No, you might think so from the number of different, VR related channels I watch and articles I read, but no, the only VR I have ever actually tried or experienced is the humble little Google Cardboard.
That is crazy. That is incredible. Yeah, because it's like you don't just watch this show. You watch quite a few VR shows on YouTube and stuff like that. And it's interesting to me because I would think, I would just think you would have probably been enthusiastic about maybe grabbing like an Oculus Go or something like that. Seems like that would be kind of like the ideal product for you to kind of dip your toes in the water. But then at the same time, you're watching all these shows, you're getting inside reviews of the Oculus Go. It's three degrees of freedom for the headset, a singular controller. So it's not that true VR experience. But were you tempted? Like when the Oculus Go came out, did you think, well, this might be your step up going above cardboard?
Yeah, definitely. I thought about the Google Daydream View, but my phone didn't quite make the cut to be compatible with that. And then I was tempted by the Oculus Go. I thought, it definitely has good reviews, and I thought it might be a step up from Google Cardboard and pretty cool to get into. And as I was thinking about the Go, considering whether to spring for that, I heard about this Project Santa Cruz. And as soon as I read about that, I was like, I want that. That's made for me, being someone who just has a laptop. I don't have the desktop, a gaming rig or anything like that. I want in on this. And that's when VR became a real thing for me. Like, okay, I can actually get into this as a real possibility. So yeah. For me, the Quest is definitely, I've already decided it's a day one purchase for me.
That's going to be a real interesting jump for you to go from cardboard to Quest. That is a hell of a jump. That's like going from a Honda Civic to like a Aston Martin or something. That is going to be huge. It's funny because people in chat, like Kev Gret in chat says, wait a minute, is that even considered VR? He's talking about cardboard. Paradise Decay says, cardboard VR, oh dear. Jim Hall, yeah. Google Cardboard, oh my. And DJ Jello Official, cardboard is VR ready.
It's actually a really good point to bring up. I'm obviously, with all of the information I consume from YouTube and reading articles and stuff, I'm well aware that it's not the true VR experience, that it's only 3 degrees of freedom, that it's, a very basic little crumb of VR. But for someone who has not experienced anything more than that, I think it's really impressive to me how a handful of experiences have really given me a sense of presence. I mean, there's a lot of really just crappy, terrible things that you can download from the Google Play Store, but there are a few hidden gems. And for instance, someone ported the Tuscany Demo to the Google Play Store, as well as another one called Alien Apartment, which was just another little tech demo. It was actually a teaser for a slightly larger game called Whispering Eons. But both of those things, although they were just tech demos, there wasn't any gameplay. It was just walking around a little environment. Those are two places that I feel like I have a memory of being there because it was a well-done environment and I had a sense of presence, even though I really wanted to be able to use my hands, or I wanted to duck or lean and I couldn't. I have felt presence, and I can't wait to get to that next level up and try the Quest.
Yeah, I actually have the Tuscany demo. I have a little clip of that is running on the screen right now. And it's funny because when you mentioned some of the experiences that you've tried, and so I did look for some trailers for them. But a lot of this cardboard stuff and a lot of this really old stuff, like it has two views. You know, it has like the split viewpoint thing, kind of what we're seeing on the screen right now. But I do remember hearing, like, see, I wasn't even into VR when the Tuscany demo first came out, but I think I remember hearing about it on actually Giant Bomb. I think it might have been Giant Bomb or one of the podcasts that I was listening to. Somebody tried this out. And amazingly enough, I've never tried cardboard. Like, I had never, before I got my HTC Vive, I had never tried any VR anywhere. And so I ended up, like, I ended up buying an HTC Vive, and it was kind of a shot in the dark kind of thing where I was basically like, what the hell? Let's just see what happens. I'm going to order this HTC Vive. This might be the worst mistake I've ever made because I'm throwing a crazy amount of money at this. I don't even know if my computer is going to be able to handle it, but what the hell? I want to try something exciting and new, and that's how I ended up grabbing an HTC Vive. But it's weird. I've never tried a cardboard. I've never even tried a Gear VR. So you haven't tried a Gear VR either?
No, I haven't.
Wow. Okay. So, well, you know, an interesting question to go to off of this is, so you have your cardboard. You've tried some different experiences in that. And yeah, King Hell says, you went in completely cold, Ant. Yeah, I pretty much did. And Chris says he went from cardboard straight to the HTC Vive. But one question I have for you is, like, just having your cardboard, and I know there's things to do and there's things to try in there, and you can do basically anything that's pretty much 3DOF in terms of just like 360 videos. I'm guessing you can do like 180 videos and stuff. So I'm sure you've done some of that stuff, like seen some of what that stuff looks like. But you're watching all these various YouTube shows. Is it hard to get into these shows when you haven't tried a lot of this, or is it just fascinating to hear about everything and kind of get an idea?
No, it's fascinating. I love it. It's almost even a little bit more intriguing because I haven't been able to taste it for myself yet. So all of it's really fascinating. Even it's interesting for me to hear about things like the Star VR and the X-Tal that are like I'm never gonna have that stuff. You know, I'm not willing to spend that kind of money. And but even so, it's interesting to hear about the technology that's coming up down the road and the technology that's going to be in the future. And eventually, one day, that stuff will trickle down to, you know, more reasonable priced consumer level stuff. So it's all fascinating to me, unless it's a specific genre of game that I'm just not into. Like people start talking about like War Dust and Pavlov. I might zone out a little bit on that just because that's not my bag of, you know, the type of game I like. But everything else is totally fascinating, even though I'm not playing it myself yet.
Yeah, that's super cool. If only every casual was just like you. But one of the games I do have running on the screen, or this experience, it is Alien Apartment. Now, you talked about this one, and at first when I thought Alien Apartment, I thought, oh, this is going to be like an alien abduction, like scary horror thing, but it's not actually that. What is the Alien Apartment thing all about?
Yeah, so it's just a little tech demo that is actually a teaser for a larger game called Whispering Eons. And I hadn't realized that Whispering Eons has since come out. You can get it now. I need to go back and try that whole game. The game is like a kind of like a cyberpunk type of game, but the Alien Apartment is just a little tech demo that's a teaser for it, and it's just an environment. It's just a little futuristic apartment set in a futuristic world where it looks like you're in orbit around some other planet in the solar system, maybe in a totally different galaxy, who knows? But it's really futuristic looking. It's atmospheric. You walk around. There's a few things that you can like interact with if you gaze at it, and it will pop up a little description. And there's a loft bedroom upstairs that you can go to. You can just sit on the chair and look out the window at the scenery. And it's very simple, but it was pretty immersive. It felt like I had that sense of presence, and I feel like I have memories of being there. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that does. How do you actually move? Like, what do you do to move?
Yeah, the movement is definitely janky. You have to do this weird thing where you either like look down at your feet or you have to tilt your head a certain way to turn on movement, and then you just glide forward like you're not controlling it, you're just automatically moving forward, and then you have to like gaze at a certain spot to turn it back off. The movement is definitely the weakest link of that experience.
Okay, Paradise Decay in chat. He's saying, does she have a PlayStation 4? And if yes, has she thought of PlayStation VR? What's your thoughts on that?
No, the last console I had was that PlayStation as a child. No, I don't have a PS4. Um, if there, before I got into VR, if there was a gaming system that I would go for, it might be, the PS4. But spending that kind of money and then like you want to buy a PS4 game, those are $60 a pop, and it's like, I don't think I would have the time that it would be worth it for me to spend that kind of money, on both the console and all the games. But I don't actually have a PS4, so yeah, the PlayStation VR was not really in the question.
Yeah, and Kev Gret says PSVR is made for a casual like her. I don't know, one of the things, I mean, one of the problems with PSVR, and I've talked about this a million times, is like my PSVR is sitting right down there, and there's a processing box, and there's all these wires going to the processing box, all these wires going to the PS4, wires going to the headset. There's a lot of wires going everywhere. And so it is, and Kev Gret is saying, no offense, but I'm not sure she is even casual. What is the level below casual? No, I do believe you're casual, and I think there's interesting angles to talk to you from. So I still think this is an interesting discussion. Whether Kev Gret might agree or not doesn't matter here. But let's see, what other questions did I have? Okay, so we covered Tuscany Demo and Alien Apartment. Well, you know what? What about AR, actually? Let me talk to you for a second about AR. So you watch a lot of these different VR-related YouTube shows, and I imagine all of them talk about AR to a bit of, a little bit of AR here and there. And I know that my audience personally, well, they seem like they're 100% negative about AR. But one of the things I consider is like they're kind of a vocal minority. Like there's people that show up in chat and chat, I'm not trying to disrespect you guys, but you guys are you're kind of the vocal minority, because I'm sure there's people that watch this show, never jump into chat ever, and maybe never leave a comment, but they watch the show, and those people might be the majority. And so maybe not everybody is anti-AR or thinks that AR has nothing to do with gaming, but what's your thoughts on AR compared to VR?
Yeah, I'm seeing a few of the questions pop up in chat. I know I'm on a delay, but just to answer a few people's questions, like how would you define me? How do you define casual? You asked me about a bit about my gaming history, but just to mention some of the more recent games that I've played, I've enjoyed The Long Dark. I got into a little bit of Dishonored. I've been really enjoying Subnautica. Keep Talking, Nobody Explodes, Banished, Stardew Valley. So those are the kind of things I've been playing recently. So however you would define that as far as casual, something below casual, I don't know. But and another really good question. Someone said, why not just buy the Go? And like I said, I was thinking about buying the Go. And then when I saw that the Quest was a thing at that time, Project Santa Cruz, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to save my money and I'm going to, be patient. And I want to wait for that, because that degrees of freedom will definitely give me more of the experience I'm craving. So that's why I passed over the Go. But yeah, I know that you bring up AR in your show a lot, and then like everyone in chat collectively rolls their eyes. But I think I share your opinion that I think AR is really fascinating. I'm also sharing your opinion that 7 to 10 years from now, it's going to be big. I think possibly bigger than VR. And I'm envisioning a day down the road where people are going to be ditching their smartphones in place of AR smart glasses. I think it really will get big and become integrated into our lives.
Yeah, a lot of people in chat, like, they'll say AR's fine, it's just not for gaming. Like they'll say AR's okay. I'm sure we'll be using AR for many hours during a day, but it's like when I want a game, I'm not going to use AR. I'm going to use VR. Jim Hall says, no wonder Anthony had her come on, because she's not negative about AR. But What do you think about that? Like, do you agree that like if you're gonna be gaming, you'll primarily be in VR when you're gaming, or do you think AR could have some compelling things, or what's your thoughts in that range?
Not that I don't think AR could have something compelling, but I do feel like AR is definitely going to be a lot more productivity focused. A lot more of the things that people might use a smartwatch or an Apple Watch for now, or even I see Microsoft being very well positioned with, potentially a HoloLens, I don't know, HoloLens 4 or 5, maybe even going down the route of being able to replace like a productivity laptop with a future version of HoloLens. So I see AR really in the day-to-day productivity type of things, and VR might be more of the thing for entertainment and gaming.
Yeah, well, okay, so what was the last handheld thing that you've used for gaming? Like, did you ever have a Vita or a 3DS or a Nintendo DS? Or has it been a
Um, I
long
have
time?
I have a Nintendo DS.
Oh, okay. So you've played games on Nintendo DS here and there, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
But I don't know. Like, see, when I think of AR, it always goes back to this idea. I have this like dumb idea of playing a game that is going to work throughout my entire house and like maybe in the backyard and everything. Where don't you remember when you were a little kid? You have to remember this. You were a little kid, you're in your living room, you get a bunch of pillows, right? You throw the pillows on the ground, but you're like standing on the sofa. And maybe you have like a
Yeah.
couple of your buddies over and it's like it's hot lava everywhere. You can only jump on the pillow. I mean, didn't we all do this?
Yeah, for my sister and I, it was called icebergs, and it was freezing cold water.
Yeah, but it with AR, I mean, with AR, I think we're going to be able to do that, and I think it's going to be pretty cool. And see, I believe, like, yeah, you are going to be moving around, and I think AR is going to be incredible from a standpoint of getting, like, burning calories and getting extra little exercise, just being more of an active person. Because I believe, like, I can imagine this future where you're going for a bike ride and AR will add to that bike ride. It's like the gamification of real life. I actually have a video where he was on Magic Leap and he was on like an electric skateboard and he was using Magic Leap. I'd have to look for it to find it, but basically the guy was like collecting coins, like playing a Mario game practically, and he was like on Santa Cruz Pier or something, or LA or whatever, like at the beach, and people were having to get out of the way of him, and he was skateboarding along, collecting coins. The gamification of real life. I mean, aren't we ever going to like go for a jog and you're going to look behind you and you've got like killer Rottweilers chasing at you in AR to give you that, to make you want to run even faster?
Yeah, it's a really good point. Pokemon Go tried to gamify getting up off your butt and getting a little bit more active. So something like that could really take off with AR, making your jog or your bike ride more interesting. And it would have to be compelling enough to be more than a novelty, kind of like Pokemon Go may have been for some people.
Yeah, that is the worry. We talk often in the VR world about the honeymoon factor because we'll get a game. I've noticed this in VR, and people in chat will talk about it as well. You get a game and you get into the game and you think, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing. And you kind of have this like honeymoon period. And then like a few days later, you're like, it's not that great. But it's weird how that works. But you know what? We have a good question in chat that I want to back up to. Paradise Decay, a little while back in chat, says, does she talk to her other friends about VR and the channels she watches? And what are their thoughts on the whole situation? Or are any of her friends curious about VR?
Oh yeah, good question. I do talk to people about VR, and I have to try to restrain myself because if I just let myself go, I will gab their ear right off and never shut up about it, and they're gonna be rolling their eyes and like I don't really care. So I'll, gradually reel it out a little bit and see how interested they are. And most of the time, I can tell they're just not that interested, and then I'll just stop talking about it and let it go. But yeah, if I ever talk to, coworkers or other family members, I did get my parents a cardboard and my sister and her boyfriend a cardboard not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before, as a little stocking stuffer. And like they tried it for a few minutes and then they were like, you know. So not really anyone around me is that interested. They don't usually bite when I try and talk about it.
Yeah. Do you think it's mostly because they haven't experienced VR yet, and so they don't know like what they might be missing?
That might be it. I don't know how much, you know, their interest would change if they, you know, did, you know, a nice like Oculus Rift demo. It's hard to say.
Okay. Well, you know, why don't we talk a little bit about the Oculus Quest, since I went ahead and popped an Oculus Quest trailer on the screen here. It will be delayed a little bit for you. But I know you're getting excited about the Oculus Quest, and here we are. It is February 10th. We do believe that the Oculus Quest may be arriving on the last day of April. And that's not that far away. In fact, it's less than 90 days away. So Oculus Quest might not be that far away. What game would you be most excited to play? Is there one particular game that like really jumps out at you in terms of what you want to get on your Quest?
Yeah, as far as just the possibilities are wide open. I'm really, really hoping for Job Simulator. I've got my fingers crossed for it, but we don't know. It hasn't even been hinted at by Alchemy Labs at all. And I'm hoping it's just that, okay, they've got their hands full with Vacation Simulator right now, and maybe it's not going to be a launch title, but maybe down the road they will bring Job Simulator. It might take a lot of work to optimize it, but I hope that it does come, because that would be my number one. As far as some games that are already announced, I mean, I can't wait to play Moss and Superhot. I can't wait to mess around with Virtual Desktop as well, just to have a cool environment to, you know, whether I need to do productivity work or watch, you know, flat media, or maybe play a few flat games. So I'm excited for all of it.
Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be pretty incredible for you to jump all the way to a Quest. The interesting thing, though, is you've never dealt with wired headsets. So you've never had to deal with that umbilical cord always, you know, tugging at you. And you're going to jump to the Oculus Quest, which doesn't have an umbilical cord either. So you get to stay wireless the whole... Like, you haven't dealt with all the drama we've had to deal with cords getting tangled up and wrapped around everything, or being stuck where you can only play VR in a very specific room. That's the nice thing about the Quest. You're going to be able to go into other rooms.
Yeah. One or two little pieces of news I wanted to give you, Anthony. One is that I wanted to debunk something that you brought up about that Best Buy page showing up, because you mentioned that and I was like, wait a minute, I've seen that page a long time ago, and I checked just to be sure. And if you check the Wayback Machine, that Best Buy page has been up since at least early October. So I don't know, there was someone on Reddit who had this really deep rumor that since that Best Buy page showed up on a certain date, that definitely meant it was going to be released at GDC or something like that. But yeah, someone on Reddit recently noticed that Best Buy page, but it's been up since at least October. So I'm kind of on the boat with everyone else that it's probably going to be released at F8.
Yeah. So you're saying I'm wrong. You're saying I'm wrong.
Not necessarily you, but whoever on Reddit had that idea. Yeah.
Yeah, well, see, sometimes there's stories out there that are not very factual, but they're fun stories, and I like them. And then sometimes the facts come along and ruin everything. Yeah, I don't think the GDC thing is very likely. Like, that is very unlikely. It's probably
I'm hoping
FA.
they'll announce some of the launch lineup at GDC. That would be cool to build up hype.
Yeah, I do expect that. What about, like, Vader Immortal? Are you a Star Wars person at all?
I like Star Wars. I really enjoy Star Wars, but I haven't seen any gameplay for Vader Immortal. I'm like, okay, it has to do with Star Wars, but what's the gameplay like? Is it, you know, like a wave-based game where you're slashing people with a lightsaber? Do you get to fly an X-Wing? Do you get to fly a pod racer? Like, what's the gameplay like? So I'm not hyped for it because I don't know what I have to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, we do know that Ninja Theory is the developer, though, and they are a really high-quality developer, right? So we're hoping for some good stuff there.
Yeah. One other game, Anthony, I don't know if you've realized, is that Pixel Ripped 1989 is confirmed for the Oculus Quest. Um, Sebastian from MRTV interviewed her, the developer, Anna Ribeiro, I think she is, and she just confirmed that, yeah, she's working on bringing Pixel Ripped to the Quest, I think, for launch. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you got to imagine anybody that can get their game running on a Quest, they're going to want to get it running on a Quest. Now, you were talking about Job Simulator, and I do have a little bit of worries about that because although Job Simulator has very simplistic graphics, it's very cartoony, you know, it's kind of like low polygon, it's not like super advanced and all of that. But one of the problems with like something like Job Simulator running on a Quest is Job Simulator is very CPU intensive because there's so many little objects that you're picking up, you're moving around, you're grabbing this, you're placing it there, you're stacking it on that, and all of these things, you know, it's a lot of computational work for the CPU and the GPU to do, and our Oculus Quests are going to have Snapdragon 835s in there. Are you worried at all about like that Snapdragon 835? Like, what do you think about that? I know you haven't been exposed to a lot of these high-end PCVR games, but you're watching people's Let's Plays of it, you're watching game trailers of it, so you're kind of getting acclimated to a certain level of graphics. Is there any worry that the Quest is just going to be like, it's not going to get you to where you really want to go?
As far as saying I don't think the graphics will be good enough for me or worrying about that, no, because I'm way more interested in gameplay than I am in graphics. But I do worry that, like, okay, maybe Job Simulator just can't run on this 835, or another game that I really like. I mean, I'm already disappointed that, you know, Lone Echo is not going to run on that thing. Skyrim is not going to run on that thing. And it's like, would I love to play those games? Yeah. So from that standpoint, you know, just the fact that I won't be able to play every game that looks cool, but I'm really happy that the price is reasonable. You know, when I heard $399, I was like, okay, where do I put in my credit card number? That's doable for me. One thing from the standpoint of that Snapdragon that I am worried about, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about this, is, you know, they say that, well, we have some advantages to push it as hard as we can because we don't have to run a phone operating system. We're just using it to power this VR headset, and they're going to do active cooling. So by using a fan to cool it down, they can push it a little bit harder than it could be pushed inside a phone. But that active cooling system, that fan, worries me because it's a moving part. And like, you ask any engineer, what is your most likely point of failure? And it's moving parts. And I am just really worried that, you know, some time in, that fan fails and it's not a user serviceable part, and then you've got a brick. You know, I don't want to have a $399 brick on my hands if that fan happens to fail. So that's one thing that does worry me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we got to hope there's at least like a solid 1 year warranty with the thing. So like if something, I mean, if something happens in that first year, I mean, you could always buy it from like a Best Buy or something like that and pay a little bit extra if you wanted to get some type of little protection plan with it. I wouldn't worry too much. I think Oculus, like, they have a plan here. They have a strategy. Right now, I'm watching a video. We have a video on the screen right now where this was, I believe, at the last Oculus Connect, where they were showing off Quest, and they had people playing tennis. And they had basically a guy, they had one person in a living room playing tennis, and then they had another guy almost like on a full-size tennis court. And they have kind of this Wii-style tennis game that's coming to the Oculus Quest. It appears to be one of the launch games. Maybe it will be bundled in. You know, there might be, like, I got to imagine a couple of games might be included with the Quest. Do you believe that there could be a time where we're going to drive by our local tennis court and we're going to see people running around with VR headsets on their heads pretending to play they'll be playing tennis but not actually really playing tennis, but they'll be using a Quest? Is that craziness going to happen?
I don't know, maybe. I do see some people on, you know, forums and subreddits saying, I'm going to go take this to my local park and I'm going to try and play some sort of an RPG running around the park, or I want to play, you know, a tennis game on an actual tennis court. So yeah, we might see that. Who knows?
What about location-based entertainment? Have you ever, I don't know if in the area where you live, if they have something like like recently, just I think it was yesterday, there's this thing called Cinemax Spaces, and we had a video, and like Dean Takahashi of VentureBeat was in there, and it kind of like puts your face on like a Terminator Salvation character, and you're with a couple of other people. We also got stuff like The Void, and there's, you know, a lot of stuff is going on in this category. Like eventually I think we're going to go to Disneyland, and we're going to go to Universal Studios, and we're going to go to Busch Gardens and all these different like theme parks, and VR and AR is going to be added to it. Are you interested in trying any of these things out?
I might be, but I would have to travel. I'm not in, a big enough city to have any of that stuff nearby. Um, it'd be really interesting if, on like your next trip to Disney or Universal, they had some really cool VR-based stuff. And from some of the patents they've been filing, it seems like they might be looking at getting into that more in the future.
You know, actually, as a casual that has cardboard, and we're putting you into this casual box here just for the sake of the show. But what about like VR arcades? Have you ever thought of, I don't know if they have any in your area, but we have some VR arcades here and there, and they're kind of, I mean, I don't think they're the best, but like if you just wanted to get a sample, just for, because see, the thing is, what a lot of people don't understand, and someone in chat asked you, what kind of PC do you have? Do you have a gaming laptop? I mean, or do you have like some type of PC rig that you're running? And what a lot of people don't understand is this gets expensive, man. This really does. It is a rabbit hole. This is an expensive hobby to be in. This is not for the faint of heart. And so the opportunity of just going to a VR arcade where they've already got a high-end gaming PC, they've already got everything set up, they've already got the lighthouses set up and all of that, and you could pay like a 1-hour fee just to be able to try like Beat Saber or Arizona Sunshine or whatever the game might happen to be.
Yeah, that might be interesting because, at one point in high school, I built a desktop PC, but have since sold that. Now I have a laptop with an Intel Core i5 and Intel integrated graphics. So that's not running any kind of VR. So the idea of just, going to a VR arcade and just getting to try something would be interesting. And I don't think there's anything like that around me, unfortunately.
Do you have a Microsoft store anywhere around you? I know there's not that many of those, but
I do think there is a Microsoft store not too far.
You might want to check that out, because people have always said like I could try the HoloLens there, or I could try like Odyssey, like a Samsung Odyssey at like at a Microsoft store. I have a Microsoft store, but it's like a 45-minute drive from where I am, and I just haven't gone there. But that could be another option as well. Man, I had something on my tip of my tongue that I was going to ask you, and now I totally forgot about it. Oh, I know. Okay, so like your laptop, you're talking about the integrated graphics and all of that. It's probably not going to really be running high-end VR. But what about like the Windows mixed reality? Like, have you ever seen these deals? And I think there's a deal that's actually going on right now. It's like Acer. It's like $189 or whatever, but you'd get like an Acer headset with 2 controllers. The Acer mixed reality probably wouldn't run very good on your laptop. Like, I mean, maybe you could get into, what do they call it? Cliff House, where you're just kind of in a basic environment, but like actually running a game, probably not. But have you ever thought about like Windows mixed reality at all?
Yeah, I definitely noticed over Black Friday that those got really low in price. I mean, for, I don't know, I think I saw as low as maybe $150 or $175. You could get one of the headsets with the controllers included, but I really don't think that I would be running very much of anything on my little laptop, even with that.
Yeah. One announcement I need to make is there is some remodeling that is going on at my house, and I know they're going to be turning off the power, which hopefully will not affect this room. But if all of a sudden this show just stops, it's because they accidentally turned off the wrong switch. So hopefully that won't be a problem. But anyway, I just have a few more questions to get into, and then we can get the heck out of here. So one of the things that you've told me offline is that you're a teacher. And so there's the whole subject of education and VR. And because you're a teacher, there's some good questions. There's some good topics we can get into real quick here. And like I've seen different experiences in VR, like Berlin Blitz. There's this experience where it's kind of like World War II. You're hearing the audio of real World War II pilots that had to fly over Germany, and they're trying to get back, and other planes are being exploded around them. And what do you think about that idea? Like, from education, do you think education and VR is going to be a game changer, or do you think it's going to take a long while for it to all work out? What's your thoughts on education and VR?
Both. I think it will be a game changer, but I also think it's going to come really slowly. I think it'll come more slowly than someone who's not in education might think. I teach science, but a lot of the experiences that exist right now that are educational are really, like history or social studies based, like, Berlin Blitz and the Anne Frank House are really good for history education. I know there is I think it's Nefertari's tomb or something like that for,
Yeah.
ancient Egypt. And, I've had the opportunity to go to one of the concentration camps that's now been turned into a museum in Europe, and to be able to allow my students to experience that without having to fly overseas and spend all that money and everything would be amazing. Not to mention the things that you can do with science. There's HoloLab Champions, I think, from Shell Games. That's basically a chemistry lab simulator, and it's not, it's not arcadey. It's very lifelike, but without the mess and without the danger. And things like that will be, I think, huge game changers. But there are a lot of barriers and hurdles to get past to actually put it into action. And one of the biggest ones is cost. Any public school is on a tight budget and funded by taxpayer dollars, and you got to really show them. They usually want data that demonstrates benefits in the classroom, that demonstrates real gains for the students before they're willing to spend the money on something. So I think it might take one of the big players, like, a Microsoft or a Google or a Facebook, to put the money up front to develop a nice, neat, tidy package of both software and hardware that's easy for teachers to implement, and then also provide data, like do tests and do pilot programs, and then be able to say to school boards and principals, here's the data that proves that this is an educational benefit for your students, so that they're willing to shell out the money for it.
I do believe there have been some basic studies done, but I just don't know that they're like peer-reviewed kind of studies. You know what I mean? But I think there's some basic studies out there that have shown where they've had a control group, they've had a group where they put them in VR and they were trying to teach them a concept in VR, and then they had another group where they just learned on like flat monitors and books and stuff, and they've had like control groups, and I think the improvement in the VR people grasping the concepts of something was pretty exponential. Unfortunately, I don't have that story in front of me right now, but I know I've heard that a couple of times. But what you're talking about is you need like legit, well-funded stories that like a real college does an extensive study on this and kind of breaks it down. But like you probably, so I guess you've never tried Google Earth, because I don't think Google Earth works on cardboard, does it?
Right. I've only used Google Earth just on the web browser, but no, that's not available on cardboard.
Yeah, because Google Earth, like of all the different things that I've tried in VR, I believe that Google Earth, like if I had Google Earth when I was learning like cities and states and geography and kind of like where everything is located on the earth, and where the different continents, and like there's a lot of stuff that you can do with that. And then also like the sense of scale, like you're involved with science. One of the things I have playing on the screen right now is Spheres, which is a pretty good science thing that is on Oculus Rift, and hopefully some of this stuff will be translated over to the Quest, and some of this stuff might work perfectly fine on the Quest, but some of this stuff might not work as well on the Quest because of like the Snapdragon 835 and certain things like that. So we're going to have to see how that shakes out. But like in Spheres, one of the episodes is like all about a black hole and kind of like what happens at the, the, oh, whoops, let's see here. Something's happened with
You're
my
back.
audio. Oh, okay. You're back. Okay. But yeah, so I was talking about spheres, and I was saying how one of the things is like on a black hole and kind of teaching you a lot about a black hole. Do you think that there are certain science concepts that might be able to be taught way better with having VR, with being able to show people the sense of scale, or also getting into like the microscopic world and kind of showing what happens like you know, I mean, this might go into like chemistry and other subjects like that, but I really think it could probably touch every little piece of education, really.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned the sense of scale. You know, I'm trying to get across to my students the scale of the geologic timeline and how, you know, how huge a scale it is and how tiny a speck, you know, all of humanity is at the very tail end of that. And I actually used a program called CoSpaces, where you can make your own virtual reality environment in a web browser, and then you can go into it in VR with something like Google Cardboard, and I think they're rolling out for the other headsets. And I tried to make something where I made a football field and I put the different lengths of the different geologic eras scaled to a football field, and in the hopes that my students can go in there. Unfortunately, a lot of them don't even have anything like a Google Cardboard, but in the hopes that they can go in there and see for themselves on a real sense of scale just how big that geologic time scale is. And I have been in the process of trying to get my school to spring for actually buying Google Cardboards, because that would be the most cost effective for the students to use. And as long as they have a smartphone, then a whole bunch of them could actually get into VR and take advantage of some of this cool stuff.
Yeah, the other thing that VR does very well too is like a lot of people have described it as an empathy machine, you know, where you can place someone in the shoes of an experience that they've never been in their entire life, like living in Africa and dealing with not having fresh water and just like the things that other people have to go through. Like sometimes we don't get a good idea of that, and VR can work good for that. Now I know that wouldn't necessarily be involved maybe in science, but you know, in other areas of education, I think that could be really huge. Let's see here. So we're kind of running down because I'm running out of time. I got to get out of here because I know this guy needs to turn off the power. But let's see, what else did I want to get into real quick? Well, actually, so you're a teacher right now and you have your own career in education. But is there any idea, because they're going to eventually, I think VR companies are going to need someone like you that is in education. You understand what you're trying to convey to your students, but they need somebody that understands that but also understands VR, and that could help, like almost be like an assistant producer or something to like help bring some of your science curriculum into VR, but not, because the problem that we get into with some of this education stuff is it's like a great soundbite. Yeah, VR is great for education. It's da da da. But at the end of the day, is it just like watching a little video and it's like a little fun treat? But are you really learning something? Like, we need to get it to the point where when you're in this VR experience, you're really taking advantage of it. You're learning it from a spatial understanding, and people do remember things in VR better because you feel like it's a place that you've been to. You know, when you're in VR, you feel like you've been there. So
Right,
like if
you've
you're in some kind of
experienced it. You didn't just read about it in a book.
Exactly. Like, especially for history. Like, if you're in a history class, like, imagine how VR is just going to revolutionize, like, teaching history and, like, seeing the Roman Colosseum and seeing these different things and being brought back to that time, but not from a movie like Gladiator. You're going to get a realistic look of what the, you know, it's not this gigantic, humongous arena back then. They kind of make it seem better in the movies, but like getting the real feel of being there, seeing the Mona Lisa. Like, you know what's going to be crazy is we're going to be able to, just in about 4 or 5 years, we're going to be able to visit museums that are on the other side of the globe, you know, or the Great Wall of China, or the pyramids in Egypt, or all of these kinds of things. We're going to be able to visit these places without having to go anywhere, without having to get on any kind of an airplane or anything like that. And we're going to have photorealism where like you're standing 5 feet away from the Mona Lisa, and it's basically going to be virtually no difference whatsoever than you being there physically. And that is going to be a major game changer for a lot of education, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. So a question asking what grade I teach. I teach secondary science, so the older kids, like teenagers. But yeah, it's going to definitely have open a lot of doors and open a lot of possibilities. So I'm really excited um, to get more VR in education. And you were asking about companies who might want someone with my kind of a background, and I've imagined myself not anytime soon. I'm really, happy with my teaching job, and love working with my students. But maybe in the future, 7 or so years, I might feel like changing it up. And I've imagined myself maybe going up to someone like Shell Games, who does a lot of work with educational games as well as VR, and saying, hey, maybe I didn't go to school for programming or anything like that, but I've got, maybe 10 years of teaching under my belt, and I can bring that to the table with the educational games that you guys are looking to design. So it's something I've, played around with that idea, possibly down the road.
Okay, well, you know what? Man, we're having a good conversation here. I would like to continue, but I know this guy needs to shut the power off at my house to be able to switch something out. So we're going to have to shut this baby off short. But you know what? ShortPower24, thank you so much for joining us. I think this was an interesting, it was a different kind of a discussion. It was cool. I really like this. And when we get closer to the Quest, maybe we'll have to bring you on again and kind of get your feelings like right before launch, the games you're interested in and stuff like that. And then also, we're definitely going to have to bring you on after you get an Oculus Quest to go from the cardboard to a Quest is an incredible jump. It is going to be incredible.
Yeah, the before and after.
Absolutely. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Absolutely appreciate this. And
sure, it was fun.
Okay, so thanks so much, Short Power. I'm going to go ahead and mute you now and go into my outro and everything. But thanks so much, and I'll probably talk to you later or something like that.
Okay.
All right, we'll see you. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is mute the audio on that. All right, guys, so you know what? It has been a bit over an hour. I know this is definitely a different kind of a show here, but I think this was cool. It's a different side of things, and we need to talk to casuals. We need to kind of explore these other angles. A lot of people are wondering, hey, why don't you buy this? Why don't you buy that? But I think we need to back out from that situation and understand that all of this stuff is expensive. It adds up. And the Oculus Quest seems like the perfect product. It really is. And I think ShortPower24, I think she probably made a smart decision. She could have gotten an Oculus Go, I'm sure, and enjoyed that. But then she'd be switching over to the Oculus Quest really soon. So it's kind of a better idea. Like, I have an Oculus Go right now. I don't know what's going to happen to it when I get my Quest. Like, am I ever going to even use it again? So these are some of the things that we think about. But yeah, that's going to go ahead and do it for this show. And I'm so glad I was able to have a guest join, because I'll tell you what, it would have been a boring show without her, because I had really nothing to get into. Let me go ahead and grab my background logo and bounce out of here. And I'll switch back over here to our regular window. But yeah, thanks so much for ShortPower24 joining us today. That was a rare treat. Really like that. And then the other thing I want to say to everybody else out there, if you are a viewer of this program, or if you're in chat every day, if you want to maybe come on the show, this is an interesting way to do it, because I can bring your voice onto the show. You don't have to worry about being on camera and all of that. And it's just kind of a phone call, basically, that we have on the show. We can get into some interesting topics. And I was thinking, too, is sometimes maybe not doing this on the actual show, like on our actual VR365 live, but actually having like special little interview shows where I'm just interviewing a person in the VR365 community, and kind of like, what are your favorite games? How did you get into VR? What are your thoughts about all these different things? What do you think about all the different headsets? Where is VR going to? Those kinds of things. And I think it could be kind of an interesting show, and we could do these like as sidebar shows. So if anybody's interested in that, all you have to do is shoot me an email, info@vrgamerankings.com, and I can line you up and get you ready to have you on a future episode at some point, or maybe one of these special little interview shows. That's what happened with ShortPower24. It was a couple of weeks back. I announced to everybody that it would be nice to have some more interesting people on, get some different viewpoints. You know, I have my one particular viewpoint. There's other viewpoints out there. And then also when you get two people together and they start interacting back and forth, it creates something brand new. You know, new things are discovered, new opinions are discovered. So I think all of that is good. It's all a great idea. So we'll definitely try to do more of that in the future. But that's going to go ahead and do it for this particular episode of VR365. I will be back on Monday about 11 a.m. Pacific time. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully a lot of good news stories and other things to get into as well. But that's going to go ahead and do it. Everybody have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys next time. Later.